The goal of today's presentation is to talk about the advantages in fruit growing and about strawberries in particular. On the first slide, we can see cherries at high density cherry trees or orchard. The concept that should be pursued is to have low density and mean and high density plantations. 3 types of plantations starting from 500 trees per hectare at mean density. There are several advantages, and it is naturally important to decide what type of plantation you would select as an option. First of all, you need to see the terrain and then to figure out what is the result you expect. The root stocks that you will use in low-density plantations should be a strong one. When talk about high-density plantations, the rootstocks are less strong. The difference between the rootstock, we can classify the rootstock into 3 categories: strong rootstock, semi-nano, and nano rootstock. With regard to vigorous rootstock, these are called Franco, semi-nano will be Capsine and Maxima 14, while nano rootstock include Gisela 5 and Gisela 6. I want to open the brackets here and talk about that when deciding the rootstock, you need to know what type of soil you have in the field, because if the soil is clay, argillous, and if you decide to go for a high-density plantation, you need to choose select Maxima 14. And if the soil is fertile, it is essential to use such a rootstock as Gisela. So it grows very quickly and goes into fructification quickly, but it's always good to start with the choosing rootstock and the soil and the field. If talk about new varieties, it is important to grow new varieties because, well, in addition to the fast fructification, they provide good quality. The results are really good. We've tried to test different cherry varieties with different sizes, and the choice of the variety is as important as the choice or the option of or selection of the best option of rootstock. It is the variety of the varieties, the range of varieties is much wider with varieties from America and from other places, and we have a harvesting calendar which is very broad, and it is important to choose depending on the size of fruits that you want to obtain from the plantation. When talking about advantages, particularly in case of intensive orchards, a few things should be taken into consideration for them to come into fructification from the very first, from the second year, so that we can harvest starting the second year and to have a better quality of fruits, because if the sapling has has reduced or limited development. The entire lymph and nutrition would go into the fruit. While if the development is much higher in case of thick branches or the development of the vegetative part, the size of the fruit will be bigger. All these aspects will lead to a better results or better fruits. Will have a bigger size in fruits, and will be able to manage the tree much better, and we will have lower costs as well as a yield where 75% will be provided by the soil, meaning that will succeed in managing up to 15 hectares of orchards, because if the areas are larger, then we should have a harvesting platform. And the technical equipment is less numerous in the case of such small size orchards, and we use much less for treatments because less water is used per hectare, and we manage to provide or to supply less water to the tree, and the diseases or pests will be less or fewer. It's important that the investment will be paid back much sooner. This is very important, because if starting the 5th and 6th year we manage to pay back the investment, on the 10th year we start making profit and allow ourselves to reinvest some amounts in other activities or on other rootstock or whatever is demanded on the market, because this is a born evolution and we need to be prepared and explore and be active in changing the varieties, the rootstock, and so on and so forth. And now I'd like to present an example of a test that was made at Bologna University using research funds. This is a test made for AgriStar Georgia Lapins, or starting the 7th and 10th years of such varieties. Why starting year 7 up to year 10? Because on a medium density plantation, which become really productive on the 15th year. But these 3 varieties, they use called the maxima 14 rootstock and 14.5 tons is the yield. If go further, we see that the production is growing. And if talk about high density orchards, we manage to increase production much more. And it is very important in terms of our plantation. It is very important to talk about high intensity plantations or highly intensive. We have from 13.5 up to 22.3 tons per hectare in yields. The production increases very much. The fructification comes much sooner, and on average in 3 years we already achieve 8.8 tons per hectare compared to a traditional variety or plantation. Another advantage that I want to talk about refers to very highly intensive plantations. You see an example on the screen from 5,000 to 5.5 thousand trees that were created in 2010 with varieties Ferrovia and Cordia. So it should be mentioned here that starting year 3 and up to year 5, we managed to obtain or to harvest from 8.2 tons per hectare, while in year 5, 18.5 tons per hectare. So the orchard starts enters into fructification very quickly, which is a special characteristic for highly intensive plantations. In the next slide, you see an economic calculation of figures in monetary terms. If mean or low intensity orchard, we start harvesting in the year 15, while in highly intensive plantations in the 4th, 5th year, the yield is already very high, like in the case of Ferrovia variety, up to 18 tons per hectare is achieved. And if we calculate €4 per kilo multiplied by 18 tons, the income will be €150,000. Well, if compare with the low intensity orchard, we will definitely not achieve such figures. So this is a feature that should be taken into consideration. In addition, the size, which is higher than 28 millimeters. This is a true advantage. So which is by 20% higher. If referred to Ferrovia, 28% have a size from 32, 34 millimeters. We're talking about a good quality of our cherries, high level of quality, which will allow us penetrate the market and export to the best prices, to ensure sales on the target markets. So obviously some of the reflections that I wanted to share with you, I wanted to provide some information in this presentation for you to remember about what may bring you advantages. And I wanted to inform you about the advantages of the highly intensive orchards, because the cherry market has evolved a lot. If in the past we would have about 80 trees per hectare, now we have up to 2,500 plants per hectare. And we need to harvest good quantities of good quality cherries. That's why the size need to be ensured. In this way, we have a market that is constantly developing. So if we want to have a good gain or benefit or to obtain really these results, and we need to start from the basics by choosing or selecting the soil and water should be available, and we need to apply to experts that could advise us, because the more we increase the requirements per hectare, we need to also maintain the quantity and quality. We need to be able to manage the water to ensure control anti-fungicides and insecticides, the control and to apply fungicides and insecticides in pest control. And also I wanted to say a few words about cherries, but another very important cultivar both in Italy and Moldova is the strawberry. I will never get tired to say that the strawberry requires lots of attention and care. It is obvious that the soil is also important, and also we need to take into account the diseases and fertilizers that are used in growing this cultivar. All these combined together may determine a good per hectare production or yield. 1 kilo per plant, per seedling, or so you pay very much for any error that you make or mistake that you make in growing such cultivar, because they are not like cherries or other cultivars your money. It is very important to choose the quality for the money invested. The fact is that you need to take into account by selecting the strawberry variety is very important. Include the climate, so which is really of primary importance. You need to choose to take into account the climate. If the region has a cold climate, you need to select on this basis. The second factor is to select strawberry varieties that reflower, which have one production period. And also the type of production. There are plantations that are created in greenhouses, plants that are planted in the greenhouse, and the plants that are planted in open fields, plants that provide a good yield in the greenhouse houses. Others would like to be grown in a pot. Others would be planted directly into the soil. There are very many factors of importance. So, and it depends on how far you would wish to go with your. For instance, the Lika is an optimal variety to be consumed in fresh form, but it cannot be stored too long and will not stand transportation. You need to select the variety that you are interested to either sell on the domestic market or to be able to transport it. So I mentioned, but I want to highlight several fundamental concepts related to production of strawberries. Or better say, I want to refer to irrigation. The most important factor, because strawberry suffers a lot if the water stagnates in the root. So I traveled a lot abroad, and I would see plantations and would hear from the producers that the plants fail due to the water stagnation. So when analyzing such plantations, I noticed that either the producers would lack experience in growing such cultivar, because if we exaggerate by use water in an exaggerated extent, all the plants may die. Here I took a picture where I showed in this case the reason was excessive water. Another factor very important is to use film, double film, and in 2 rows, which is definitely a method that allows you to optimize by 100% the strawberry plantations. So I don't say that if you use 3 rows or 3 layers instead of 2 layers of film, this will not give less or more results. So would risk to have plantations that would die faster. To the left on the screen, you see on November the 27th, I managed to save this plantation. Because so in ideal conditions, the plants managed to recover within a very short period, because on 26 August the problem was caused. So another factor, a fundamental factor related to strawberries, is chemicals treatment. Each of those who grow strawberries, you need to adjust, adapt an optimal system for applying chemicals. As I said, this is the first time, the first mistake when the fruits start rotting, particularly when we do not have a climate or weather schedule. We risk to lose up to 80% of the products, such as this dew. Other two diseases very important that are anthracnose and staining. So we talk about bacteria or viruses that should be timely prevented and controlled, and you need to be very careful and intervene in case of such diseases to avoid them to the maximum extent, because there is a red line that separates a good production, a less good production, from a less good production, where we definitely we invest money. And as I mentioned about fertigation, strawberry is a cultivar that eats a lot, and in order to produce fruits, it requires 10 tons per hectare. So 30 tons of nitrates, phosphorus and potassium. So if you want to produce 25 to 30 units, we need to provide good fertilizers, to treat them with good fertilizers. The fertilizers should be provided during the adequate phases of the vegetation, because if you apply much nitrates in the first phase, you risk to burn the plants. So you should observe the stages, because only in this case we will be able to ensure optimal results. Here the pictures are from Italy. So strawberries that were planted in August. To the left we see a picture from Uzbekistan in a 3-year plantation on 3 hectares, strawberries that were planted in May. So definitely when we do have a good basis of a plant that has developed good roots, we manage to achieve good yields. Speaking about growing strawberries and cherries, so this is a profitable business, because during the pandemic it is important to focus on the quality. It is important to have a good quality product and also ensure the quantity, because people like eating well, the mankind likes eating well. So we focus on strawberry plantations or cherry orchards by requesting the opinion or the support of a specialized company or specialist who would advise you, who would come to the field. And also it would be good for you to make videos, and if you want to have a win-win situation, and if you produce in order to win or to gain, you need to be advised by somebody and to be followed afterwards. This is the line that separates from a person who invests and gains and a person that invests and loses the money. So this is the end of my presentation. I hope to have disclosed some concepts about what is really important. I wanted to inform you because I've been involved in this activity for many years. Although I'm young, I started my professional career long ago, and I have extended experience, and I wanted to provide everything that is important and can be useful for you in the future.